Hello, how is everyone? Long day, long day. Thank you all for being here today. I know we're getting to the end of the conference. I believe they said, but Ashley Gunn at Coinbase. I work on our public policy team. I previously worked in Congress for Congressman French Hill, who will be here this afternoon. So excited to get into our panel today about blockchain and the Beltway. To begin, we have a great panel here today to discuss it. I'm going to let them sort of introduce themselves and go along the line and sort of talk about how they got here.
Thank you.
Lane.
Hi, I'm Lane Kasselman from blockchain.com. Capital B, not lowercase b, so not blockchain in the Beltway, capital B. I'm the president of blockchain.com, and we're one of the largest crypto brokerages in the world. So if you're from the UK, you definitely know us, and if you're from Texas, you definitely know us. If you're not from those markets, maybe you don't, but you will soon. And the reason I'm up here is because I used to work in politics, actually, most of my career. So worked for a president, worked for a senator, worked for a governor, worked for a mayor, and worked for a lot of people who ran for office who didn't actually get elected. So I've been around the policy world for quite a while before I went into leading a company.
I'm Katrina Paglia, super excited to be here for this conversation. I'm the Chief Legal Officer for Pantera Capital, which is a crypto venture capital fund that's been investing in the blockchain space over all the various different asset classes for many, many years. We were probably one of the first in the Bitcoin space back in the day. Prior to Pantera, I was at Coinbase, where I ran the product legal team responsible for the exchange and the digital asset listing process there, along with some regulatory and policy matters. And then prior to Coinbase, I was a TradFi person, and I converted. I spent my 15 or so years as an attorney in various asset management, legal, and compliance functions, and then pivoted to the dark side, and happy to stay here. Kyle?
Hello, everyone. My name is Kyle Schneps. I'm VP of Public Policy at Foundry. Foundry is an upstate New York-based company that is part of the Digital Currency Group family, and we are all focused on sort of empowering the Bitcoin ecosystem. We have the largest Bitcoin mining pool in the world. And yeah, my background, I spent most of my career as a US intelligence officer, and got passionate about Bitcoin and moved into working in the space and haven't looked back.
Great. Well, thank you all for being here today. You know, I think to begin, I'm going to sort of start with a big overarching question here. Obviously, since the election, we've seen a lot of movement in the crypto and Bitcoin space. Not to mention, Bitcoin may be crossing over 100K here soon. If anyone knows, yell it out, because we're all monitoring. But I would love to just go down the line and maybe start with you, Lane, and hear how you think things have evolved in the crypto policy ecosystem now that we have the country has elected Donald Trump as president.
Yeah, well, a lot's happened in 2 weeks. I think that's an understatement. I think, you know, what has really become apparent is there was a lot of euphoria in the first week, right? And sort of the thinking was anything is possible. And there were a lot of news stories that sort of listed the 20 or 50 things that would happen for the crypto industry as a result of this. I think maybe that was wishful thinking, but I do think what is becoming clear is there are probably 5 to 10 big initiatives that are on the table for us that are likely to happen. And so we're seeing that momentum already, and the conversations around who will be on the President's Crypto Advisory Council. We're seeing that in the discussions about who the new chair of the SEC will be. And so I think that's probably where we end the year and sort of lead up to the inauguration with a really clear list of what we think we can get accomplished in the next couple of weeks. I think we're all optimistic about what that, or sorry, in the first couple of years, I think we're all optimistic about what that'll be.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. Katrina?
Yeah, I mean, totally echo everything Lane said. I think it was definitely some euphoria. I think it's continued. I recently heard that, I think we all know crypto very much was a huge point in the election, right? So the largest PAC, Fair Shake, had a huge impact in kind of how everything landed in the red sweep that we had. Interestingly, which I'm continued the euphoria as a result of, that PAC is continuing to raise money looking into the interims. Like, they're already looking into 2026, and they've already raised over $80 million just in the last 2 weeks alone. So I think it just kind of underscores how real and how meaningful the crypto voter really is in the US. And I think that means our voice is being heard. So this is the first step in it, and I'm super optimistic about the next 4 years. I agree it's going to take a couple years to get some things done, but I do think 2025 we're going to see some material changes, and we're going to kind of get into that in detail in a little bit more. But you know, all signs point to the moon right now.
Yeah, to me, the biggest sea change resulting from this election, and after 3.5 years of fighting these battles that we've all been fighting with this all-of-government approach to try to crush the industry, to put it bluntly. What I see now, and what I've learned is that, and I really have believed this, and especially in working with New York lawmakers, which is mostly Democrat, that this was not really a partisan issue. This was a generational one. And when I look at the election, what I see in, as was mentioned, with the appointments that are being made, they're younger, right? They're all, roughly between 40, 50. We see a new generation coming in, and I think they are open-minded or passionately supportive of the industry and of crypto and of the technology in general. And that is going to go a long way for policymaking in the future. It's going to go a long way for how we are able to interact. And both parties have new generation of leaders. And so I think that is the biggest sea change as a result of this election.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think all of you made some great points. I think the crypto voter did show up for this election. I mean, that's something that we've been working on a lot at Coinbase. And I think, Kyle, your point about the generational shift is an important one. I mean, look at, Vice President Vance, who Trump is sort of propping up to be his, legacy going forward. So I would love to sort of talk about that in terms of with this, new set of voters, with this generational change. What do you think are some of the specific policies that Trump could implement, sort of maybe in his first 100 days, his first year, that are sort of in direct conflict with what we've been seeing out of the Biden administration, who has been so, difficult when it comes to crypto? Maybe, Lane, I'll start with you.
Well, there's a couple of them. I think the one that's most interesting that gets thrown around a lot, that would maybe be one of the easiest things for at least him to sign an executive order on, is the strategic Bitcoin reserve, which, if we're excited about 100,000 today, get excited about 300,000 or 400,000, right, with that scarcity. And I think that creates a really interesting dynamic for those of us that work in crypto, because, it creates scarcity for kind of our bellwether asset. But it also creates legitimacy in a way that we've never seen it before. But it also creates an environment in which regulators around the country start looking at digital assets as something to really transact with, right? Because right now we have a handful of states, I think it's sub-6 states, that will take crypto for tax payments or any kind of government fees and that type of thing. And it's a little bit of a novelty, right? And I think for that to really become something that's commonplace, it needs to be led from the federal government. So I do think that average Americans and average citizens and residents could feel the impact as a result of a move like that. It has much longer coattails than it would seem just from a simple announcement. Yeah, totally agree with that. Katrina, would love to hear your thoughts, obviously coming as a chief legal officer, sort of what does this mean for the SEC and the CFTC and this whole securities versus commodities debate that's out there, and sort of what does that look like under a Trump administration?
That is the million-dollar question that I'm getting asked on a daily basis, both internally and externally. I don't know exactly what it looks like. I think what does end up happening is we get the buzzword regulatory clarity in some form. I think we end up with chairs of both of these commissions that are crypto-friendly. And just to take a step back, obviously crypto is very important to us. There's going to be a lot of things that these chairs are going to be focused on, right? There's a huge financial industry out there that they're going to be responsible for. But I do think that crypto is going to be made one of the priorities. So hopefully we have people who are willing to talk to each other, willing to basically put a framework in place between the two of them where they're saying, look, commodity in this scenario, security in that scenario. And I do think there's a security scenario, right? I do think there's ICO concept does probably fit under the SEC's purview, but there needs to be an off-ramp. There needs to be a way to become the commodity that the majority of these things are today. So that I think should happen, and hopefully that's in parallel with some legislation. I think there probably needs to be something that comes out of the Hill first, and then the two regulators will hopefully partner on this instead of playing a turf war that we've unfortunately seen for the last 4 years. And it does seem like the names that are being floated around are either crypto-friendly, maybe not crypto-native, crypto-friendly, a lot of positivity about the kind of front runners that are being rumored at the moment. So I think hopefully we end up with more of a partnership going forward, and that just will trickle down into the industry kind of having what we need to bring innovation back, and for people not to have this concern that when they launch something in the US, they're gonna get a subpoena the next day and be part of, the $400 million of litigation fees that we've been paying for the last 4 years. I mean, it's a staggering number, right? So no wonder people are scared. So I think we get people in, we get the heads of these commissions in, and people start to kind of come back and want to start building back in the US.
Yeah, I do want to come back to the legislation conversation in just a second, but I want to stay with you for just a second because I think what you just said was really important about the subpoena and the litigation. And, it's no secret that Coinbase is being sued by the SEC, as many other companies are that Gary Gensler has taken on. What do you think this means, for litigation? As an attorney, do we think Gary Gensler today announced that he's stepping down as of January 20th, which,
right,
in my opinion, Ashley Gunn's opinion, very excited. But
that's the right response. Yeah.
But I'm curious, does that mean does litigation stop come January 20th? What happens to all these active lawsuits?
There's a couple of things that could happen procedurally, right? So they could actually just go in and file motions to dismiss and withdrawal of their claims. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's just too far of a stretch. I think what we're going to see is some settlements. I think we're going to see some neither admit nor deny type language come out for some of these claims. They're going to, quietly go away. The defendants will pay something. The SEC gets to make some level of a statement there, get something for the value of the time and the energy that the government has spent kind of looking into these things. And that, I think, will be very beneficial. The Wells notices are also out there, so that basically means you're kind of under investigation for an enforcement action to be brought relatively soon in the near future. I think some of those maybe just quietly go away and they just stop spending the resources investigating some of those organizations that are under a Wells notice. And then I think the other thing that might happen, it's litigation adjacent, but I think we're hopeful that we'll start to see some no action letters come out of the SEC. The rumor is Commissioner Peirce is going to take over the crypto kind of vertical within the commission until the permanent chair is placed. And I think we're going to see her recommend some no action letters for some of these investigations that are outstanding. So I think that can all happen pretty short order come January. So we're looking forward to a January, February kind of chill on a lot of the litigation that exists today.
Great. That sounds fantastic for my view. Kyle, I want to switch to you from a Trump administration. Obviously, you have a strong background in national security. Trump has made known some of his national security picks, CIA, DNI, DOD. What do you think what does the crypto Bitcoin ecosystem look like from a national security lens? We always hear about a lot of this is a matter of national security. We want to keep this here in the United States. I mean, what are you seeing from your end?
Yeah, so, and as a preface to this, some colleagues and myself put together a book called Bitcoin as a Tool for Modern Statecraft. Every chapter is written by a different US military or intelligence veteran. Suggest you get it, because in each chapter that we go through a different aspect of national security and why Bitcoin is really important. And we had some great supporters from Senator Lummis and Lynn Alden and other folks in the industry. So it was, recommend checking that out. But from a kind of a 30,000-foot view, my view is that there's an incredible opportunity here for the United States to support and plug into the Bitcoin network. And what I mean by that is that this is the largest, most decentralized computer network in the world. And when we're talking about things like China's Belt and Road Initiative that they have been developing for decades now, and which we cannot compete with. They're in Africa, they're in South America, they're doing all sorts of things to build physical infrastructure to try to increase their influence across the world. What the United States has a unique opportunity to do here is to tap into a digital Belt and Road Initiative that's already in existence with the Bitcoin network. And by doing so, you're promoting the same values that undergird the US Constitution are the same principles that are the foundation of Bitcoin. And so you have a 24/7 advertisement for people to check out of their autocratic systems or corrupt governments and tap into this pro-US network. And so from that high view, I view it as a huge opportunity to do things like the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve, to, as President Trump has mentioned at the Bitcoin 24 conference, like to make sure all Bitcoin is made in America, that sort of thing. But I think by embracing this network and this technology, there's an incredible way to automatically have this digital belt and road at your fingertips that is looking to the future, not sort of archaic infrastructure stuff like what some of the Chinese government is trying to do. So that's sort of how I view this from a national security lens at the 30,000 foot view.
Yeah, I think that's, I've never heard it described that way, but that makes a lot of sense, and that's really fascinating. That's great. So sort of the last sort of bucket I want to talk about, we already talked about the executive branch here. I do want to talk about sort of the legislative branch and what's happening in Congress. I think a lot of people in this room are aware, but if not, there was a large crypto market structure bill called FIT21 that has moved through the House last May, got 2/3 of the House floor to vote for it, huge bipartisan support, which was very exciting. Then it sort of moved over to the Senate, and there's been lots of conversation in the Senate about this bill. It hasn't really moved a whole lot, but we're here fits and starts of maybe some Senate taking it up. We've also heard a lot about stablecoin regulation and like stuff that's happening in the stablecoin world. Obviously now we have a whole new administration coming in, and I think there's going to be an interest to sort of put their own Republican spin on that. What do you all see happening sort of whether it be the remainder of the year or into next year, as it relates to legislation and sort of what the timeline, sort of the roadmap looks for that? We'll start with you, Lane.
Well, a pitch for my later session interviewing Congressman French Hill, in which we'll talk about this very issue. So please join us for that. We touched on this a little bit earlier. And if you think about the next Congress, or sorry, the next sort of Republican-controlled Congress, they have basically 2 years until the midterms, right? So there's a 2-year window in which the Republicans can sort of get whatever they need through Congress within reason. And that means they've got a huge list of priorities. And as we said, like, we're not necessarily the top of that list, right? In the financial industry, there are a lot of things they need to do. I think top of mind for them is renewing the tax cuts and maybe some additional tax cuts. That stuff's going to take a while, right? So I think we're all hopeful that a version of FIT21, FIT24, FIT25, I don't know what we would call it, comes back and sees its way through, because we all want a permanent regulatory framework. And I think that we'll all be lobbying for that to happen. I think stablecoin legislation is probably much more likely in the near term, because there's probably less controversial about it, even amongst one party. So I do think we'll see some movement. I just don't know that we'll see the complete package, at least in the first year. But again, let's ask your former boss in about an hour.
I mean, he was one of the authors of that bill, so
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Plug for everyone to stick around.
Yeah.
Katrina, anything else, any other thoughts?
The only other thought I would add is I think one of the way the question was phrased is more like, or was included because something happened this year. I think no.
Yeah.
I think that, yes, somebody could go crazy and try to push something through, but everything kind of gets reviewed. I think there's like a 60-day look-back concept where once seats change over in Congress. So I think it would be shocking and aggressive if anything did get put through. But I fully agree with Lane. I think stablecoin, low-hanging fruit, bipartisan support for it, very uncontroversial, and then market structure, much broader, takes a couple years to get there.
Anything from your lens?
Yeah, I mean, just quickly, I agree. I don't think anything will happen, and there are some positive things in some of these bills for sure, and there's been able to be some positive things carved out. My general view, I know it's not everybody's, but is that a lot of these bills, I feel like they were negotiated while our homestead was under siege, and so we're about to get out of that siege, and that's when we want to negotiate that stuff. And so taking the good stuff and maybe adding some more things to it.
Yeah.
And Kyle, I'm interested from your lens. Obviously Foundry does a lot of work in Bitcoin mining. Is there anything specific for Bitcoin mining or AI or anything in that realm that y'all are thinking about for legislation in 2025? I think a lot of it's been around crypto market structure or stablecoins, and sort of how does that intersect with all the Bitcoin work that's happening?
There's lots of opportunities here. One thing I'll mention that I've spent a lot of the past year trying to think about is almost a kind of not to be a little too dramatic, but almost an equal rights for data centers. I can certainly foresee, I want Bitcoin data centers to have the same rights and to be considered the same legally as an AI data center, as an Amazon data, whatever. I think that crypto mining data centers in general need to ensure that they're not able to be thrown over the bus or excommunicated from larger data center legislation that will surely be pushed by the big 5 companies.
Yeah.
And so that is something that I'm paying close attention to, and I'd love to work on legislation that kind of addresses that.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think we've seen a lot of that at the state level for sure, this data center conversation and this energy usage conversation. And it's only a matter of time, I think, before it filters up to the federal level. So I think that makes all the sense in the world. I think one thing that is interesting that maybe, Lane, you might have a good insight into is sort of, obviously we're talking about the need for regulation and the need for legislative clarity, but I do think that there's this mindset in crypto that, why do we want regulation at all? Like, why does that even exist to begin with? So maybe from your lens as sort of the president of blockchain.com, you can sort of talk about what the regulation means for your company and for your bottom line, and if it's helpful.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, right? Like, why do we want a permanent regulatory framework? And I think if we sort of go back to the era of 2021, right? It was pretty crazy, and there were a lot of companies that were doing a lot of illegal things, right? Like, we all have had a hard time with the SEC and sort of the Wells notice in a cereal box kind of activity over the past couple of years, but the SEC has a real job to do in protecting consumers, and all the companies that exist today really do believe in consumer protection, and we believe in following the rule of law. But we need there to be laws. And the examples that were sort of set in 21 and all the companies that imploded for engaging in illegal or immoral activity, it's good that they're not here anymore, but I think that sort of left us in a bit of a gray area where we're not really sure how to follow rules that don't exist, and regulators have been reluctant to create rules because they don't really know who is a good company to work with and what good models are for the industry. So this has happened time and time again in tech. This happened with ride sharing, this happened with home sharing, it will happen with AI. So it's sort of our turn now where like the bad companies have been washed out, the good companies still exist, and we will get regulation that is reflective of our needs and a way to keep consumers safe and ensure stability in our financial system.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Anything else from Katrina or Kyle?
No, I think you nailed it.
I think you nailed it. You nailed it. Okay, so we have about 2 minutes left. Maybe just a fun question to wrap up. Anyone have any inside baseball on Treasury nominations, CFTC, SEC? What are we thinking? Who do we want? Does anyone have any insights?
I mean, there's names. I don't want to say there's names, but it's better for me not to comment because I will, as a registered investment advisor, I'm supportive of whoever becomes my new regulator. Fair.
Yeah, I'll kind of frame it this way, but there's certainly a lot of push from the trade organizations, I think, in DC for Senator Hagerty at Treasury. He's got a long history of being supportive of the industry, and so that's certainly a name that I would be excited to see for Treasury.
I think while blockchain is proud to be aligned with Coinbase and stand with crypto and everybody else and advocating for different electoral outcomes, I think as it comes to cabinet appointments, we're sort of staying out of it. And really, the thing we get asked the most is like, what will Bitcoin get to this year? So we stick to predicting that as much.
Oh, what's your prediction on that?
Oh, I can't.
Did we hit 100K yet?
I know, that's what I want to know. Did we hit 100K? Anyone yet?
Not yet?
Not yet.
Well, I think the bottom line is I appreciate all your very diplomatic answers on a very public stage. I think the bottom line is, whoever these people are is better than the status quo at the moment. And hopefully we'll see some positive crypto changes come out of that. And whether it be Senator Hagerty or, all the other names that are floating out there, I think we're all hoping, and I think it'll be good for crypto. Well, thank you all for coming today and being on this panel. We appreciate all of your attendance as well. And I think we'll leave it there and go on to the next one.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks everyone.